Perfect timing, and we have a couple folks online. We have one online. Okay, so it's us and one person online. And there's us and one person online. Oh, who is that online? Good. Okay, welcome everybody. We will turn things over to Angela in 1 minute, but we do need to approve the minutes from the last meeting that were sent out as well as in our packet. So if there are any changes or questions, I like the font, Peggy, thank you. You can go the other. But, any changes, questions, corrections? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve the September 19th, which seems like a lifetime ago. I lost October. Anyway, to approve the September 19th minutes. Motion. Second. All in favor? Aye. All right, thank you so much. Yes.
Oh, sorry. Sorry to myself. I do have a correction that has me not present in the section meeting.
Oh, okay. Got that. Thanks. She's not on the list that she was here.
Oh, okay, I'll correct that.
Okay.
I don't know if it matters. If it's virtual.
Oh, you were, okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
He was on virtual as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gerardo. Yeah. Great. I didn't remember that. I just had a conversation at church the other night. There's a thing called a vanity screen. So that you don't have to do this. We don't need this here. But our choir members have to do this to follow the service. So they're gonna get us a vanity screen. So we can watch ourselves sing, which I also think is disgusting.
Yeah.
So I was like, vanity screen, like, why was you? All that in the corner, but anyway, I digress. Angela has a few updates from the food center. Just one.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gail. Before we jump into the main purpose of our meeting today, I just wanted to give a very short update that the Food Center Authority is subject to a legislative audit every 4 years. We are due for our legislative audit on March 1st, and we just found out they're here. So they came early to let you know it has started. They're still in the planning phase of the audit. They will begin the field work within the next few days. These generally last about 6 months. It's very labor intensive on the food center's part. There's a lot of documentation that's required, a lot of questions that have to be answered. So at our next meeting, since this just literally just happened, at our next meeting, I'll go more into depth what a legislative audit is, so that when we get the report back, it'll make more sense. Everyone will understand what it is. But for today, we don't need to get into that. So the next thing we're going to do is move into the presentation of the audited financial statements and the budgets for the information that you received. So before we dive into the data, I do like to give everybody just a little bit of background about who I am. I am the Senior Director of Real Estate and Finance for the Food Center Authority. I am a licensed CPA. I also have my master's degree from the Johns Hopkins Real Estate Program. And everything that I'm going to talk about today, I'm definitely wearing both of those hats throughout the entire presentation. And I don't think I've ever shared with this board my MFCA origin story, but I think it's really relevant today. So I just wanted to, if you'll just indulge me, I want to go through that really quickly. Back in 2004, I was working as an auditor at a firm in Timonium. And also back in 2004, the Food Center Authority was being audited by a firm called Lindsay and Associates. And it was a multi-year contract with Lindsay and Associates. And they performed the first year. And then because of deficiencies in the Food Center Authority's accounting department, Jim Lindsay and Associates came back and said, we are not gonna do the rest of the years on this contract unless you can address these deficiencies. So the Food Center Authority at that point rightly put out a request for proposal looking for an audit firm to come in and to completely rebuild their accounting department. And my firm where I worked was awarded that, and I was the person that came in and rebuilt everything. And so as a result of me coming in and rebuilding everything, we were able to give Lindsay and Associates meaningful financial statement information so that they could continue their contract and they finished all the rest of the years. So now if you fast forward a bit, most of you were here, not this year, last year. And we had major challenges with the auditor last year. Not only did we have issues with their timeliness of the reports, but they just did not have the technical skill to perform our audit. And in management, it can be very tricky when you have a disagreement with the auditors. I know I'm right, but they think they're right. And so what ends up happening is I can argue with them and I can have a disagreement with them, or I can have a disagreement with them, and that disagreement can become a reportable item that goes into our audit. So I have to be very careful what I do. So do I think they were wrong? Yes. Did I tell them that they're wrong? Yes. But I can't win that battle with them because they're the final judge. And if they don't have the technical skill to know they're not doing it right, I'm never going to win. So what happened then is, coming full circle, our audit this year was performed by Lindsay and Associates. So the current back from 2004 is back now. And so back in 2004, I feel like I can say I rescued Lindsay and Associates. I rescued them by getting them data so that they could continue out their contract and they could finish that contract out in full. And I can now say in 2024 that Lindsay and Associates saved me, because we finally had an auditor who does have the technical skill and was required to go back and look at the things that I knew that were wrong, and they had to make a prior period correction. So if you look on our financial statements that y'all got, you don't have to look right now, there's just an extra paragraph in this audit report that would not normally be there. And it's called emphasis of a matter. And it says there was a prior period accounting error. And so they had to correct that. And it was in the amount of $207,000. Oh. And now that's $207,000 to the good for the Food Center Authority. So when we had this meeting last year, and I told you what our net income was, it was actually 200,000 more, but there was nothing I could do until we got rescued by Lindsay and Associates. So how did the audit go this year? Amazing. They were so perfect. They were done in plenty of time. The communication was excellent. There were no disagreements whatsoever. It was just great. And we got them early, which we haven't had that in years. So it was definitely a great audit experience. And I'm super happy to be back in good hands again. All right, so let's jump into the packets. All of you should have received a FedEx delivery. In that would have been your audited financial statements for fiscal year 24, your operating and capital budgets for fiscal years 25 and 26. And what I did this year, the same that I've done many past years, is I try to take all that insane amount of data and I try to consolidate it into just a few pages to try to tell the story of the Food Center Authority, of where we were, where we are today, and where we're going. So if we look on page 1, and it is up on the screen, except that somehow it moved. There we are, page 1. Which one? You are in the colorful one.
The cheat sheet.
Yes. Look for your colorful. So if you go,
if you're colorblind.
yes, okay. Sorry. So we're looking on page 1. This report is set up so that the first column is going to be our actual results from June 30th, 2024. The middle column is going to be our estimates for fiscal year 25. That's what we're in today, and that ends June 30th, 2025. And then the next column is going to be what we're projecting for 2026. That doesn't start until next year, so we can look at that as saying where we're going. Before we really get into the data, I do have to give you the GASB 87 talk, and I know I've done this before, but I have to do it every year because it has such a significant impact on our financial statements. Several years ago, we were required to implement a new accounting pronouncement that was put out by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, and it's called GASB 87, and it relates to leases. I don't believe, and I could be wrong, but I don't believe that the board intended for this pronouncement to affect agencies like us. What I think they were trying to do is they were trying to say, do agencies have a copier lease? If you have a copier lease, let me tell you how to handle that copier lease. Instead, what they did is they took a state agency where we generate 100% of our revenue from leases and has completely turned upside down how we are required to show rent revenue. And it's not as if we can elect not to adopt this pronouncement. If we don't adopt the pronouncement, we will get something that's called a qualified opinion on our audit report because we're not following generally accepted accounting principles, and that is death. And what you want is an unqualified opinion, which is what we got and what we've gotten every year since I've been here. So we have to follow the rules. And so what the pronouncement says is that it treats each lease individually as a financial instrument. And so what you do is you look and you see over the lease period, how much rent am I going to collect over that period of time? And then I'm going to discount that back at a certain rate. And then I'm going to create an amortization schedule based on that number. And if you think about an amortization schedule, they're very heavy with interest at the beginning and very light with interest at the end. But the rent piece, what GASB 87 has done, is they take that first number, and let's assume we have a 5-year lease. We have a 5-year lease, and that first number of when you add all the numbers together, you only get to recognize 1/5. So they flatten it out. It's the same exact amount every year over the term of the lease that you're allowed to record as rent revenue. And that's not real. That's not what's happening. If you look at our leases have built-in increases. And so what happens with cost over time? Costs go up over time. So you definitely want your rent to go up over time so that we can cover these increasing costs. But GASB 87 does not allow us to do that in our financial statements. Instead, what it does is it takes our rent and it flattens it out. And then depending where you are in your lease term, your interest is going down over a period of time. And all the while, your costs are going up. So the only thing that the Food Center Authority can do to try to mitigate this, to try to flatten out these big swings, is to each time that we offer a lease renewal, there's only been one since GASB 87 started, and there was only a handful of leases that were included in that. Each time we have a new renewal, every person signing will have the option for a 3-year lease or a 5-year lease. So what we're going to try to do is stagger all of these amortization schedules so that the interest will flatten out over time. It's going to take a long time for us to get there, but it's the only thing that we can do because it absolutely makes our financial statements not meaningful. And that's kind of the whole point in audit. Is to present financial statements that are meaningful. And so just so that you know, what we will do in just a moment is, since I don't think this is very indicative of the Food Center Authority's position, and it certainly doesn't tell you how management is doing, because we can't control anything that's happening with GASB 87. We will look at another schedule that is included in our audit report. It is a non-generally accepted accounting principle schedule, but what's important is that it backs out all of the effects of GASB 87. So what you're going to see rent there is what rent always was. It's what's in the lease. It's what did we collect. Now, I will also tell you, because of the GASB 87 nonsense, I now have to do everything twice because you have to get the GASB 87 number, but you also have to get the cash number. So there's just a lot more work that goes into keeping this GASB 87 straight. Again, I don't think they meant it for us, but we're impacted by it. On 7/1/2023, we had about 10 leases that came up for renewal, and again, they were given the 3 and the 5, and they all took whatever they wanted, which was great. We really want them to stagger. We don't want them to all. So hopefully in the future, that's going to help us flatten things out for the interest. So if we're looking on this schedule and you look at the brown numbers, what I wanted to highlight for you is that if you look in 25 and 26 for the produce market and the Maryland Market Center, and generally most of the properties, you're going to see it's the exact same number. I assure you, we are not collecting the exact same number in each year. We're going to be bumping that up by CPI, but because of GASB 87, I cannot show that to you in this document. I also want to highlight for you the green boxes. The green boxes are the interest. And if you look at the produce market, where 9 of the new leases were at the produce market, you will see that the interest revenue in 24 was 350,000, and then it goes down to 286, and then it goes down to 208. And that's just how it works with an amortization schedule, and there's nothing we can do. The only thing that could have fixed that is if we suddenly had more leases to renew, and we don't. The next item I wanted to show you is in the admin leases interest revenue. You would see that that number goes up, so that's kind of going against what I've been saying to you. But the reason is that if you look on the line for CCAP, CCAP is a lease that this board approved and it went to the BPW. And it started on September 1st, 2024. And so that just started. So now what we got to do is we got to bump up the amount of interest that we're allowed to record, but take a look at the amount of rent that we're allowed to record now. I promise you, we're collecting more now than we did last year, but according to the way that you have to report this, we're showing much less rent than we did before. So again, it's very meaningless. I promise you, I'm gonna go through something that's meaningful. It's coming, I promise. Okay, and the next line item that I want to show you, because it's quite fascinating in the same way, is NAFCO ground lease 1. And you see that it's a 0, a 0, and a 0 straight across. We have a ground lease for this site, and it is a 75-year ground lease, so it's worth a lot. But there's a 20-year buyout clause that we reasonably expect to be exercised. And because of that, 2 years ago, due to accounting rules, we were required to show it as if we sold it already. We still have it. It's still ours. We didn't get any money. Nothing has happened. It turned into something called a direct finance lease, and it's simply because we do reasonably expect them to exercise the buyout clause. So you will never see rent again for NAFCO ground lease 1. You will see interest because it is a financial instrument now, and there is a portion of interest that we're allowed to record, but we will never see rent, despite the fact we do collect rent every single month for that property, and we still own it. But according to our financial statements, we have sold that property, and we did get to take a $2.7 million gain 2 years ago for not selling it, but selling it. So it's accounting. There's nothing we can do. If we didn't do it, we would get a qualified opinion. Okay, so the next item I wanted to speak about is, has anyone heard about the budget deficits at the state level?
Oh, yeah.
Anybody heard about that? It's kind of like the front page of the paper, $2.7 trillion. No, it's really high. Deficit. And so whenever we hear budget deficit, we have to be concerned about cash sweeps. The state holds our money in the general fund. They have access to it. And they have in the past come through and they have swept the cash out. I've been doing the reconciliation. I have seen it happen. It is terrifying when you see it. Because at first you think it's definitely the state. They can't take this. Oh, they can, and they do. So it's very important for us, especially today. And the thing I just saw in the paper 2 days ago is that one of the budget analysts down in Annapolis said this is the worst he has seen in 20 years, which is terrifying. But I mean, the good thing is that we're good. It's like we're solid. We don't get money from the state. We make our own money. So just know that what happens with the state generally does not impact us, except when they come to take our money, and also depending on if they give raises or not, which we'll get into in just a moment. So when we are talking about our operating budgets, we want to make sure that we are maximizing the cost for all worst case scenarios so that we can attempt to protect our money from being swept by the state. One thing I did want to mention to you about entrance fees. When truck delivery drivers come into either of our markets, they have to pay an entrance fee to come into the market. And those entrance fees do not belong to the Food Center Authority. Those entrance fees offset the costs that the tenants pay to the Food Center Authority. So that's not our money, that's the tenant's money. And we will look at that a little bit later today when we look at our revenue and disbursement report. But we wanted to let you know that on July 1st, the produce market tenants voted to increase those entrance fees, and they doubled them. And so basically tractor trailers went from $25 to $50. And again, we don't control this. This is voted on by the tenants. The tenants, it's their money. And so this is what they decided to do. So I did increase the amount of income that we were anticipating for entrance fees because they did increase entrance fees down at the market.
So that fee affects.
It affects what?
Farmers making delivery.
I guess it depends, because farmers have a different
Yeah.
entrance. It's a very different system
Oh,
than a tractor trailer coming in to make a delivery. Okay, so in the operating budgets, you'll see that between fiscal year 25 and fiscal year 26, we have a 4% increase. That's generally in line. We're going to go way more into depth in the operating budget in just a moment. But part of this line item for operating budget is another fund, GASB. It's a GASB 68. And so this is an accounting pronouncement that went into effect. It's probably been about 10 years now, and it relates to pensions. There are two pieces of the puzzle for pensions for state agencies. There is the amount that we are required to pay in every pay period. This is cash. This is real. They look at our payroll information and they take the money to fund the pension. Any statement that I ever create for you guys will always have that in there. That's real. But there's another piece of the puzzle, and this is the piece of the puzzle that the auditors screwed up on prior year. There is this pronouncement requires that the state at their level, so at the highest level of financial reporting, they are required to show a specific number for net pension liability. And so what they do is they use an actuary to come up with what that number is as of today, and so it's $1 billion. And then they use some sort of system based on payroll to allocate a proportion to each state agency. So that when we do our financial statements, and then they roll up into the state's top financial statement, that final number for net pension liability is going to be that number that that actuary came up with. It's not real. It's an estimate. We're never gonna pay that. It's not something that we can control whatsoever. So that's another one of those things that I like to back out when we try to look at a net operating income to see if you can tell how management's doing making decisions. And so we'll get to that in just a bit. In blue, you'll see there's the line for interest income general fund. Back when I started at the authority in 2004 through 2009, the Food Center Authority was allowed to keep all their interest on the money that was held in the general fund. And then suddenly in 2009, they started to sweep it. And we definitely fought it, but we did not win. And then it was through a review of our statute, I think it was about 2 years ago, that we went through and we said, I don't think they're allowed to be taking our interest. And so we put together a document, we sent it to the state, went through their legal review, and they said, you know what, we can't take that. So sorry for the 10 years we took. We're not going to give that to you, but we will give it to you every month going forward. So since then, we have gotten to keep our interest. And it was a whopping $910,000 this year. I know that that is an anomaly. Everyone knows interest rates are really high right now. I do expect at some point that they're going to come down. So when I was estimating what our interest income would be over the next 2 years, I brought it down to $400,000. I in no way expect that that number will carry over into 25 into 26. And so another item on here is loss on termination of lease. And it's not highlighted, but I really wanted to bring it to your attention. This is solely as a result of that GASB 87 and the way that we have to record leases. Unit 4 is the vacant lease right now at the Maryland Market Center. It's gone because they were having issues paying, but they, more importantly, were having issues with pest control. And so what we really needed to do was get in there, gut that whole unit. So their lease was terminated, it is vacant. We are going to go and do the same renovation to that space that we did to the other spaces. But because of GASB 87, we have to record something called loss on termination of lease. We didn't lose anything. We didn't pay anything. Nothing happened as a result of us canceling that lease. Now, we do lose the rent that's coming in, and there's a proportionate share of expense that we have to pay, but that has nothing to do with this number. This is all solely for GASB 87 for us to unwind all of the nonsense that GASB 87 put onto our financial statements for this specific lease. The results for fiscal year 24, which would be your change in net assets, is $1.6 million. In fiscal year 25, if we collect everything that I'm anticipating that we will collect, if we do everything that we're going to talk about in our operating and our capital improvement budget, our change in net assets will be approximately $440,000 in fiscal year 25, the year that we're in. Same goes for 2026. You see there's a 77% decrease in that, down to almost $100,000. We will always have that decrease. I'm going to tell you this every single time that we do that, and the reason that we're always going to see that decrease is because of this system. It's because of GASB 87. Our rent is flat, our interest is going down, our costs are going up. But most importantly, a little later today, we're going to look at the capital improvement budget. $6.2 million in projects that we're trying to do in capital improvement projects just this year. And every single one of those generally will have a component of it that's depreciation. So that when you move into the next year, all the depreciation expense is now gonna show up in the next year. So your net income will always go down unless we decide not to do any capital improvement projects, which would never happen anyway. So when we were doing this meeting last year, we were projecting fiscal year 24's number, which came in at 1.6 million. We were projecting that it would be $682,000. Now, we know that 900,000, right, it's swinging a lot, which is nice, but if you take out the effect of that increased interest, we still beat our target by hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we can report that fiscal year 24 was a tremendously successful year for the Food Center Authority. And so that is the conclusion of the net income portion. Does anybody want to speak about any of this? Okay, let's move on to page 2. Okay, so as promised, here is that schedule. This is the real one. This is the one we can actually talk about. Because what this schedule has done is it has taken out all the effect of the leasing pronouncement and also the pension pronouncement. So we're giving you meaningful information here. And so what we're going to look at is we're just going to look at the net operating income. And the reason why we only want to look at net operating income is because these are really the only line items that management can control. All of the other line items outside of this are outside of our control. So when you're trying to identify whether management is making good decisions with the resources for the Food Center Authority, this is the statement we want to look at. So if we were to look at the table down toward the bottom, the first line talks about the generally accepted accounting principles net income. That's that other schedule that we talked about, the one that's kind of weird. When we look at fiscal year 23, if we didn't have our current auditor makes a correction, that number would only say 94,000. But because they came and they fixed what the people did wrong last year, now it is 300,000. And so we can see that the change in gap between 23 and 24 is about $400,000, and I traced it back. And it's related to the fact that we signed those new leases on 7/1/2023, and so interest income is higher. So that's what, but again, it doesn't mean anything, it's not real. So let's look at what's real. The next line is for non-GAAP operating income. And so one of the things that I want to tell you, I do want to apologize, because when I was looking at this schedule and I was thinking about what I wanted to say, I thought, well, where's last year's numbers? It would be really helpful if you gave me all the rental data and all the operating expenses data, and I promise I'm going to give that to you next year. But what I did was I just wrote it down. So I'm going to share it with you, so at least you know what the numbers were, but I promise next year it'll be much easier for you to be able to see the comparative differences. So if we're talking about revenue, from last year to this year, our actual rent, the leases, the dollars, the cash went up by $310,000. So that's terrific. But then we got to talk about expenses. And so I know everyone knows that over the last several years, expenses has gone up extraordinarily across the board for all line items. So we did our best to try to control costs, but the dreaded expenses due to CPI changes in the economy went up by $337,000. And so that's why if revenue goes up by 310 and if expenses go up by 330, that's why when you compare 2023 to 2024, there's a $30,000 decrease between 23 and 24. But when I'm looking at this, to me, these results are basically not changed. It's the same. What is amazing that the Food Center Authority did in a time of extraordinarily high costs, we did not see this number plummet down to 200, down to 100. We kept our net income at a really healthy amount. And I can tell you, when I came here, the highest net income that this place ever showed was like $300,000. And we are now consistently outperforming that. Okay, so despite such a challenging environment over the last year, like I said, fiscal year 24 was a terrific year for the Food Center Authority. Does anyone have any questions on the supplemental schedule?
Does that rent include the ground rent?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But it backs out the interest, the fake interest, but the real cash that we collected.
And this is in the audit.
That is the
Okay.
second to last page
Okay.
in your audit statement. And the auditors aren't required to do that, I asked them to do it, because I really think that it's important information for the reader of the financial statement, because that's the whole point. When you get financial statements like this, when you're a financial professional, you are relying on the fact that this is meaningful, but to me, it's not, and it's because of GASB 87. If there was no GASB 87, it would be fine. Okay, so let's go to page 3. So page 3 represents our operating budgets, not our capital. We'll get to that in just a minute, but this is our operating budgets. And before we do that, I do want to talk about what our objectives are when we do a budget, because other state agencies may have different objectives than what we're trying to do. Number one, especially right now, we are trying to protect our cash from getting swept by the state by demonstrating a need for the money. We also need to ensure with every line item that we have estimated what the worst case scenario would be, because we are contractually obligated in our leases to provide services to our tenants. So let's assume one day temporary labor suddenly doubles in cost. We need to make sure that we have enough money to pay for temporary labor if we do need it. Every year when we go to do these budgets, it's a very collaborative effort and we all work together. It's really great. We evaluate all of our facilities and we determine what capital improvement projects we need to do. Sometimes we end up not being able to do them all because we don't have the cash or the net income to be able to do it. This year was one of those years where we had to push off some projects. Last year, great. We didn't have to push off any projects and I don't feel guilty when I tell people, sorry, you can't do that one. And then the last one is that if you think about many other state agencies that are appropriated, let's say they have $10,000 to spend on a line item. Well, they're going to do everything they can throughout the year to spend that $10,000. We are not like that because we keep our appropriations, because the state can't take anything away from us besides this week. We prepare for the worst case scenario, and then we exercise budget control measures to try to keep the costs as low as possible. Because that's what we want to do. A lot of our costs get passed on to the tenants. So not only does our procurement policy require us to pay the least amount possible, but we also want to make sure that we're saving everything we can for our tenants. Okay, so this schedule is set up just like the other schedule. As fiscal year 24 are the actual numbers. If you looked on our financial statements, you would see those numbers. That was where we were. And then middle column is our 25. That's what we're in right now. And then 26 is where we're going. And that's going to start on 7/1. And maybe it was about 5 or 10 years ago, that middle column, it says amended now. And 5 or 10 years ago, it didn't. It would just say request. And so what we would do every year is whatever the board approved at the prior year, we would leave it exactly what that number was, despite anything that's happening in the economy or anything that's happening in the world. We never made any changes to that. But to me, that doesn't make sense because we're not really giving you the real information based on information we have today. And so starting about 5 or 10 years ago, we do amend that middle column to reflect what is going on today. Okay, so the first line item that we'll talk about is salaries, and you'll see that it has a 7.3% increase. On January 1st, 2025, we have a 2% COLA increase built in. On July 1st, 2025, we have a 4% COLA and a 2%, a 4% merit and a 2% COLA. These are standard. We do this every single time. This is nothing different. But if the rest of the state isn't allowed to have payroll increases, we do not get payroll increases. We follow exactly what the rest of the state does, but we want it there in case we can. And with the budget the way that it is, I mean, there was one time we went 8 years without getting an increase. And in fact, there was a furlough with a 10% salary decrease. So scary times, especially when we're great. Like, you know, we're so successful and we gotta be worried, you know, about what's happening down in the other place. So,
The other
place, not here, the other place.
down the road.
That place. Okay, so also included in that 7.3% increase is the addition of a new admin position. And it was probably about 2 months ago or so. Gary, Don, and I met, and we were going over the challenges that we were experiencing. And one of the things that I know we have is that if we pulled out my job description today and we look at, and this a year old, because it still needs to be updated, there's 72 tasks on there. No human being can do 72 tasks. It's impossible. And since then, major things have been added to my job description. So the thing that we decided that we needed to do moving forward for everyone is that we needed to hire a new me. So what does that mean? That means we need someone who is a CPA, that I can push all the GASB 87, I can push the financial statement, I can push all of the accounting, all the leasing, all the things that I do now that take all of my time, that doesn't allow for me to do the other things that I need to do. I also have, a year ago, we had an HR staff that had been here forever. You don't even worry about HR, you don't even think about HR, and then she retired. And so a year ago, and I always prided myself because somebody would say, oh, I got an HR question. I go, I don't do HR. I don't know anything about HR. Go see in the corner. But now, a year ago, now I'm in charge of HR. So not only have I had to learn everything, educate myself, but there's, as Miriam can attest to, we deal with HR. We deal with HR things all day, every day. So probably half of my day at some point is spent just working on HR issues. And they're critical. We're opening ourselves up. So if we don't do those right, that's a big problem. I am also, I'll tell you the story because I think it's funny. Someone had just left the authority and they were the procurement officer. This was 2018. I had never done procurement at that time. It's a similar story. So I'm sitting at my desk and I hear Don come down the hallway and someone said, who's going to be the procurement officer now? And I'm just working. And he goes, Angela. Who? So again, I had to learn everything that has to do with being a procurement officer. And I don't have the time now to do the things that a procurement officer should be doing. And when we do our legislative audit, which we're doing now, the procurement is where we tend to get the most findings. And so if we can give me the time to do what we need to do for procurement, we're going to have way less findings for our legislative audit. So remember that when we get the next report, remember that, okay? The other thing that I do that is critically important to Governor Moore's administration is I'm the MBE liaison for our agency, Minority Business Enterprise Liaison. And I have been attending those meetings for many, many, many years. And I have never seen a governor show up for that meeting, but he does show up for some of these MBE meetings. So it's pretty amazing to see that he's so plugged into it. I can tell you, they've been surveying us a lot. I don't know if any other state people are MBE liaison, but they have been surveying us to death over the last few months. And the one that I got last week was really eye-opening to me. And it asked me many things, but one of the things it asked was, how many hours does your MBE liaison spend on this program? And these were the only options. It was 10 or more hours a week, 20 or more hours a week, 30 or more hours a week, or 40 or more. I just, nope. I assume they want us to be doing that much time, but I promise you, I have nowhere near that amount of time to work on our MBE program, but I want to. That's the difference, is I want to. They want us to be going out, doing outreach, interacting with the MBE community, holding conferences. They want us to be doing these things to expand the program. I just don't have time to do it. I also am the document manager for the Food Center Authority, which we do have our document retention policy now, but someone has to administer it. I promise you I don't have time to do that right now. And then something that happens every single day that every person here that works at the Food Center Authority can tell you, and for anybody who works in business, is that there are daily fires that come in every day that have to be put out. And so if you already have 8 hours of tasks to do, and then you have 3 more hours of tasks for stuff that is not on your list, and then you have 2 more hours. I mean, these are 15-hour days. That's not uncommon. So I do work generally 7 days a week. I do generally work every holiday at some point in time during the day. I don't want to do that anymore, and it's not sustainable for a human being. So that's why we need to hire someone who can do the things that I do that will free me up to be able to do the other things that I just mentioned. And so When we talk about this 7.3% increase, when we're going to add a COLA, when we're going to add a merit, that and also a person, that's gonna automatically trigger other line items to go up, like your FICA's automatically, pension, health benefits. Just know that when that salary number goes up, there's a whole bunch of other line items that pop up right away too. The next item would be on the communication line. And it's a 3.9% change, but it's really not that much from a dollar perspective. But I wanted to take a minute to talk about how the Food Center Authority processes our payroll. And since I've been here for 20 years, we are still using the same system. I assume it's the same system that they've used since 1984. It is a DOS-based program. It is written in COBOL. The people who can service this software are dying. Yeah, so the state has decided that as of March 2025, that payroll processing function will be gone. It will be sunset. But thankfully, the Department of Budget and Management came up with a solution for us. We will all now be using what the rest of the state uses to work there.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll be using that to process our payroll. We are one of two of the first agencies like us that are getting transitioned in. So it's happening right now. So 5/1/1, we are supposed to be fully live. We'll see. I'll report back. I think we're all like, our payroll processing is very manual. It takes days. So I think we're all really excited. I mean, it's gonna be tricky because it's new, but I think we're all really excited because it's gonna really take and automate a lot of things that we do now manually. And so that software costs money. And so they're charging us for that software. So that's why you're seeing increased costs. Under motor vehicle operations, you will see that, oh, I'm sorry, I skipped over fuel and utilities, forgive me. Fuel and utilities has a 6.4% increase. It was about 2 months ago, I got a call from our energy supplier rep. She's wonderful, she checks in pretty regularly with me. She called to warn me because she knew we would be doing budget soon. She called to warn me to let me know that if anyone who uses BG&E for their distribution, going forward, I think it starts in January or February, there is a massive rate hike that is about to happen. And we have no control over it whatsoever. And the next, right, and the next day, I saw it in the paper. So she told me about it the day before because it's all done by an auction. So she called me on the day that this auction occurred. And it was a historic increase that has never happened ever before. And so what I've been reading in the paper is that just homes should see like $30 a month more. That's so much. When you think about businesses running refrigeration, oh my goodness, it's going to be incredible. So what we needed to do is we needed to increase our budgets for the electricity just based on what our energy supplier told us to do. The next one would be your motor vehicle operations. We are going up 5.3% there. The first item for motor vehicle operations I will talk about is insurance. Our insurance went up 65% this year. When I got the number, there was no way it was right. I sent it back. I did recalculations. I sent it back. We went up 65%. So that's a big part of this. But also in this specific line item for motor vehicle operations, whenever we buy equipment for the markets, I'm not talking about when we renovate or build things. I'm talking about a trash truck, a sweeper, a scrubber. When we buy equipment to be used exclusively in the markets, what we do is we bill the tenants for those purchases. But if you have a $250,000 trash truck, they don't want to pay that in 1 year. So what we do is we split that up over the useful life of the truck, which we consider to be 10 years. And so they only have to pay a portion of it each year. This is the line item right here where you will see those numbers flowing through for the vehicles that we're purchasing. We are purchasing a sweeper, a trash truck, and a dump truck. And so that would cause these numbers to go up and would explain why we have a 5.3% increase. The next line item is the decrease of contractual services. It goes down by 8.5%. When we look at the fiscal year 25 number for contractual services, in this line item, if we have vacant units at any of our markets, the MFCA is then responsible for paying our proportionate share of the market expenses for that month. And so we have unit 4. Unit 4 is empty right now. We know we have to pay our proportionate share of those expenses. That gets recorded in this line item, contractual services. We are hopeful, I'm gonna get to this in a little bit, but we're hopeful we're gonna be getting a few more units back down there to do more renovation. If that does happen, obviously that number will go up. So when I created this budget, I did it with the idea that we would have 7 vacant units down there. So this would represent in 2025 additional costs that the food center would have just while those units are being renovated. All of those units are already spoken for. We have a very deep wait list. We have people busting down our door to try to get in here and to get into our space. So why does it go down in 26? Because we'll be fully leased again. So we won't be paying any of those proportionate share expenses. So that's why it goes down by the 8.5%. When you look at the fiscal year 24 actual number all the way down at the bottom, you'll see that it's $4.5 million. And then in the middle, it's 5.8, and on the right, it's 6 million. So why the heck does it go up so much? Well, the reason is because we're not trying to spend every dollar that we budget for. Remember, we're trying to save money. We're not trying to just go right up to the limit of whatever budgets we can get approved. We are also not fully staffed right now. We have vacancies in security that we're still trying to fill. One of the things that we benefited from in 2024 is that we had a mild winter. This is critical for the Food Center Authority. We have a nasty winter. That number can be hundreds of thousands of dollars in snow removal cost. And then something else that we've been doing for many years, and I'm guilty of it, but we're changing. We tend to, the admin employees, we tend to hold on to our IT equipment way past when we should get new IT equipment. So what I've had, hi Frank. So what we do is that Frank gives us a budget, right? Gives us a budget for who should have one. And then we just don't do that. So we budget for it, but we didn't actually spend the money for it. And so what I have experienced, because I've now done it 2 different ways, and one way is way better. You can either ride that laptop till it dies, and then you're sitting at a black screen, and then you're waiting for the new one to come in, you're waiting for it to be configured. I mean, this can be weeks. Or you can just follow the schedule that Frank gives us. And then what you do is you have 2 screens going. You have your new guy as they're still getting it set up, making sure you can scan, making sure you can print, making sure you have access to all the software that you need. But you also have your old guy that's still working. And so what I've done before is I've had that guy not working. And so I'm just sitting there going, ah. So we're not allowing people to do that anymore. We're requiring them to replace, and I'm sure that just got one. We're requiring people to replace their laptops, even though they don't want them. But when they need them, they have to get them now. Say that we don't. I'm telling you, we don't.
Until you
But we
see
do
that
it.
blue screen.
That is so true.
Until you just
So
go
true.
blank.
Absolutely. Okay, so when we're looking at the difference between 25 and 26, as I mentioned on the first page, it's a 4% increase year over year. And that's right in line with cost increases that we're seeing in the economy. So I also like to look at our anticipated challenges and our successes when we get to this part of the presentation. We continue to have trouble hiring and retaining employees. We've done much better in maintenance. We're solid in maintenance. Security, we're still having a lot of trouble with hiring and retention. If you recall, back when we talked about our tenant satisfaction survey results, the department that had the lowest results was security. So that's what we're focusing on right now. We are trying to figure out ways to not just improve the tenant satisfaction, but also try to improve our employee satisfaction. So people want to be here and they're happy, and then maybe the tenants will come through and then they'll be happy, and then everyone will be happy. Another challenge that we have is keeping the maintenance staff safe and healthy. It is a very challenging, grueling, physical job that they do every day, and they have just done a fantastic job. We also have the CDL driver shortage through 2030, but what we've been doing is we hire a laborer. We like that laborer, and they stick around for a while. We say, hey laborer, how would you like to be a CDL? We'll pay for it. And so what we do is we send them to training. They do sign a document. that says you have to stay for X amount of time, because we're not training somebody to go somewhere else and get something, somewhere down the street. So we are hiring from within, and so we've been able to manage that challenge by sending our own people who we believe will be a really good fit, we believe will be a long-term employee, and so that's what we've been doing. Also, if you look on your page, it says legislative audit next year. I just did this a few days ago, okay? The legislative audit just started, okay, so that is a challenge. Okay, so what are our anticipated successes? We are still working on the produce market expansion project. We just had a meeting, was it yesterday? Meeting was yesterday, day before. There was like 20 people in this meeting. We are at the final stages. We are 95% done on the drawings. They are finishing electrical loads, dock levelers, what's the temperature, what is the dry versus wet sprinkler system. So we're just really at these final details to go on to the drawings and the specs, and then we'll be able to go out for bid. Of course, that's all gonna come before this board, so everyone will see that before it goes out, but we are still moving forward with that project. Another anticipated success is renovating at least Unit 4 down at the Maryland Market Center. We're gonna do exactly what we did back in 2018 and 2019 and just go in, got it, new electric, new plumbing, new bathrooms, just beautiful, beautiful, and it will make the market safer. It makes us better for pest control, food safety, it's just, and we get higher rent. Did I mention that too? We get higher rent. So it's just win, win, win whenever we can go in and do these renovations. So when we have a vacancy, I think Gary feels the same way too. We get excited because we know we can get in there and it's 1984 thing. So we gotta get in there, get all the old out and make it new and start the cycle again. And then the next anticipated success would be meeting the annual MBE goals. The governor has a target set of 29%, and in fiscal year 24, we were only at 19.44. For many years prior, we always met that goal, but this past year we did not. And so I really want to dedicate my time. I know we can do better. And so I want to really target that so that we can get back up to the 29%. Okay, so this is the operating budget. Does anybody have any questions on the operating budget before we move into the capital improvement budget?
Thank you for the coffee.
Okay,
We learned so much.
so on page 4, this is set up just the same as all the other schedules, 24, 25, and 26. And I just want to highlight before we look at any of this big produce market expansion project is nowhere in here. And the reason it's not there is because we have 10 million from the state and we have $2 million from the county. So once we blow through that, you'll be seeing that, but there's no effect to our financial statements at all when we've been given the money to spend on the project. So we're going to start over in the fiscal year 24 actual column. And I've highlighted the Howard County MMC in lieu of bond. This relates to the project behind the Maryland Market Center, and we are so close to being finished with that project. We're still dealing with the forest conservation easement issues, but we were required to put a bond to say we will complete the project, and instead of doing the bond, instead we just said, here, just take our cash, hold our cash, and then when we're done, you just give us the cash back. So we expect to be getting that 1.178 back as soon as we're done the project, and we're so close. I will let you know when we get there. Also, I want to mention water main breaks. Until very recently, we did not budget for water main breaks, and every single year I was coming in here telling y'all about water main breaks with our aging infrastructure that we have. So now we got smart and we're putting in water main break repairs for each year of $100,000. That allows us to have multiples because we have multiple markets. We've been seeing a lot at the produce market. I know Gary worked with the architects and engineers trying to design things that would make it better when we have a water main break in the future at the produce market with this big expansion project. So hopefully we'll see less and less of these, but aging infrastructure, it happens. And we haven't had one yet down here, but we're expecting, right? I'm sorry, we're expecting in any minute. This market is 10 years younger than that market. So we're expecting that any minute to happen. So just know, we've got the money to do it, should it happen. Okay, so now you also see that we purchased a scrubber for the produce market, a scrubber for the Maryland Market Center. 2 years ago, on the tenant survey, we had multiple replies that said pretty horrible things, like, why do you use that scrubber on a dock? All it does is make it dirtier than before. And we knew it was bad. These scrubbers were delayed for a year. We ordered them, but it took a year for us to get them. And they're here now, and you don't hear any complaints whatsoever with the new scrubbers. So
What
those are,
exactly is that?
want to describe what the scrubber looks like?
The scrubber is a sit-on unit, you'd see in Home Depot, but a lot larger.
Gotcha.
Oh, okay.
Has brushes on the bottom.
Yep,
And soaps.
yeah, it sets the soap and then it pulls the soap up because you can't have soap down on the ground. It has a center brush and it has a outside brush as well for curves.
The soap smells good, so like when you come through right after seafood, it's like, ooh. Oh, it's fine. Okay, and then the last item, and this.
It's human driven. The one on Home
Yes.
Depot scares me. When it's,
Yeah.
when it's just remote and cases.
True.
This is a human, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do the scrubbers have plates, or is it just a sweeper that has?
Please.
Yeah, to be able to drive up here. I have seen from time to time equipment that ends up in the,
Parking lot?
yeah, in the parking lot.
Yeah, they can drive anywhere.
Yes. Okay, so the last item that I just wanted to highlight is roof. That relates to the Maryland Market Center roof. That roof was done long before the end of fiscal year 24. Because the MMC building butts up next to the NAFCO building, there was a section where it was attached. And in that section where it was attached, there was an issue. And so that did not get fixed until July 2024. That final cost ended up in the fiscal year that just ended. So as far as the tenants are concerned, there was no roof project in fiscal year 24. It was just in that area where the two buildings met. That's completely done, tenants level. Okay, the next item, we're gonna go into fiscal year 25. And we're gonna talk about the stream restoration. It's been, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, time is so strange. Where we had, into this meeting, we had a company that does stream restorations. And so they were able to give this board additional information. The Food Center Authority is required by law to earn a certain amount of stormwater credits over a period of time. And you can do it piecemeal by doing a little project here and a little project here. And I can assure you, little stormwater management projects are extremely expensive because we do them, so we know. And we have the benefit of having a stream that runs through the produce market. And so one of the projects that is available to us is to do a stream restoration project. It should give us, if not all, most of the credits that we need. And when we met with this company that gave us better understanding of the whole project, I had run an analysis using our actual data. So using our actual data for other stormwater costs that we had for other projects, trying to add together what the credits would be. If we do the stormwater project, we save millions of dollars over doing them piecemeal. Just, oh, I get 2 credits here, I get 4 credits. If you do the whole stream, you could get all 40 credits that we need. And so this board approved at that time $285,000 for the design phase. And we are coming to the end of that design phase now. We're going to be moving into the construction phase, but don't worry, it's more than $500,000. That means it's coming back to you guys anyways. There will be a full discussion about it. Just approving this today just sets the money aside for us, but we can't execute the contract without coming to speak to you guys. The next item is cybersecurity. A few years ago, we were subject to a cyber assessment that didn't go terrific. So we've been doing a lot of things since then to try to improve that score. And some of the things that were identified by that particular company, that auditor, was that we needed a business continuity plan. And so what we did is we went back to the company that performed the audit, because they already know what we do. They know what we had. They'll be able to see what we've done. And so we are entering into a contract with them to test our cybersecurity systems that we now have in place, and to also help us develop this business continuity. So that's why you see expenses of $200,000 in fiscal year 25. That is not what we're contracted for. We're contracted for way less than that, but we wanted more in there in case they come back and they say, nope, you need to fix this, you need to fix this. We wanted to have the funds available.
So your computer systems are not connected to the state.
Not at all. We do not go through do it. Okay, so now in 25, we'll just touch briefly on the purchases that we're making for the market. I know that I've already mentioned them before, but the things that we're getting are a sweeper, a skid steer. You want to say what a skid steer is?
Skid steer is basically a Bobcat.
You like this?
Okay. We also have already purchased a heavy duty pickup truck, but this board approved that purchase last year. We just happened to do it in July of this year instead of last year. We also are planning to get a new trash truck and a packer. And the reason why we need this equipment, this is not new, this is replacing existing equipment that's already gone way past its useful life. We do have a lot of repairs that we can do here in-house, but when you're dealing with a 1999, we still have a 1995 truck. Still have a 99.
Yeah.
So we got a 95 and a 99. It's time to get a new truck. Okay, so now the next item for us to talk about is guardhouse renovation, and it's $1 million. When the markets were built, this one was in 1984, the one down the road was in 1974. The guardhouses, there's one, and it's stationed at the entrance of both those markets. The guardhouses that are there now are the original guardhouses, and I'm just gonna say it nicely, they're disgusting. They should be burned down. I would understand why employee morale would be low in the security guardhouse coming into such an oppressive work environment as it is. We all met accounting operations. We weren't just talking about the guardhouse, we were talking about security in general as it relates to the tenant survey. And so what we were talking about was we have this guardhouse, it's miserable. We have trouble retaining employees. But we also have this new issue of much higher entrance fees to come into the market. And the reason why that's important is because before COVID, we only accepted cash. So the only way to get in the market, and that's very standard, the only way to get into our food market is cash. After COVID, because it was very important for the tenants to get those entrance fees, we wanted to stop letting them go face to face to hand the cash to them. So we implemented a whole new system of credit cards, bank ACHs, and so it is a very complicated system. And because we're the state, we are told what equipment we can use. And their equipment does not integrate with our equipment that we use. And so what they have down there in the guardhouses is 3 separate systems that they have to deal with for a transaction. It is likely to make a mistake. When they make a mistake, the guards are required to reimburse the tenants if they didn't collect that. Now, we just doubled that amount. So you have a guard, makes 2 mistakes in one shift, goes $100. What's the point? What's the point of coming to work? So as we were considering all of these items, we said, all right, let's just go crazy. What could we do different? And so we said, number 1, let's go back to cash. So if we go back to cash, it takes away all of the issues with all the different accounting systems, be one system then. We did it for decades, so we know it works, we've done it before. We do have security in place, there's cameras, we've been subject to legislative audit, we've been subject to a regular audit, doing this system for years and years and years and years. And so we know it's okay, we can do it, we have systems that we can put in place. But I'm gonna be very vague right now, and I'm gonna say, a very big challenge we have is that there will be then cash in a box. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. So there will be cash in a box. And so if we're going to go back to that, then we need to do everything that we can to protect that person that is inside that box. And that's gonna include bulletproof glass, which by the way, I didn't know this. Supposedly this is all bulletproof glass in this building that was originally built. I didn't know that, Tom told me that. But we would need to have all anti-robbery procedures built into it, you know, so it would be expensive. to be able to do that, but we would be protecting our employees. So that's why you see such a high price tag. We don't know what it's gonna cost. We just threw $500,000 for each one, but we definitely know that it's going to be very expensive. If we do this, we go back to cash, we know we've got to protect those guards. We also know that it should resolve the issues that we're having with guard errors right now, where they owe us a whole bunch of money and then they're paying us back on a repayment plan. It's not us that paying the tenants back, a repayment plan, but we hate that. And that certainly doesn't make someone want to come to work in an already challenging environment. So if we can improve their satisfaction with their work site, maybe they'll want to stay, maybe we can retain them. Their morale may be higher because they're in a nice working environment instead of just a simply gross environment. The good thing for the tenants is that it's going to save them at least $12,000 a year in credit card fees that are now gone because we've gone back to cash. So that's terrific for them. So someone would look at that $1 million though and say, oh, but don't the tenants have to pay that? They don't. We pay that. That's part of our capital improvement project. If we did this, this is all benefit for the tenants. And one of the things that we know we want to try to overcome, it's going to take architects and engineers to figure this out, but our current guardhouses are not ADA compliant because they sit up on a curb. That has taken an entire pool of employees away from us. If we can get ADA compliant guardhouses, now we have more people that we can bring in as employees. So it's a win-win-win. And again, this is so much money. This is coming back to the board. So don't think for a minute that we're not coming back to you with this. We just wanted to tell you, we are trying to take active steps to help the security department because we recognize that there are Our next item would be the $500,000 in here for the Maryland Market Center. That relates to the project behind our existing market here. We don't need $500,000, but because we're so close to the end of this project. But what if something crazy happens? I just want to make sure in the spirit of the budget deficits that we're seeing right now, that we have that money should something crazy suddenly pop up at the very end of this project. The next item is the renovation MMC units pre-2024. This board has already approved that number that is carried over from the prior $4.5 million. But the next item is the $600,000, and that's new. And we're hopeful to get 10, 12, 14, and 16 back to do a renovation on them. We're not sure yet, but it would be great if we get them back. We know we've got 4 back. So we just wanted to make sure that we have money in the budget for us to move forward to renovate the vacant units exactly the same way that we did all the other units. We've become quite good at it. Okay, and I will say again, it's a good thing for us because we get to charge more rents. And then the next fiscal year 26, fiscal year 26, the project that I wanted to mention there is the dump truck. We needed to replace our existing dump truck. It is long past its useful life. I mean, that is another one of those things that we would go back to the tenants over a long period of time. You may now turn the page because this continues our capital improvement discussion. Because what I gave you right there was just really a summary. I want to now drill down into all the different departments because it's really important to me that there is a sense of fairness in how we spend our money between all of the different sites that we have. But we are really challenged right now to spend money at the produce market because let's say one of the things we know we want to do, we want to put bird netting up, which would protect birds from nesting up in the canopy. But if we're closing that in this new project, what's the point of doing that? But we need it and we can't do it. So we can't, we're paralyzed, I guess is the best way to put it. We certainly are going down there to repave because they're going to tear that up when they come through. So we're really stuck at the produce market until we get this project going, which should be in 2025. So if we were looking at 2026 budget, we are looking at $264,000, which is 42% at the food center. Food center would be considered this building, our CCAP building, the truck lot, BTS, and Rock Hall. And then at the produce market, we're budgeting $425,000. And then we're also budgeting for $188,000 at the Maryland Market Center. But what I like to do is I've been doing this for many years now. I like to see how much have we actually spent each year? How much have we spent over the last 15 years at each one of our markets? And so if you look at produce, over the last 15 years, we spent $6.8 million. And over at the Maryland Market Center, we spent $8.9 million. Please keep in mind, all of the costs, it's been hundreds of thousands of dollars, are not accounted for in here for that produce market expansion. So that's not even in here yet. And we're also stuck with not being able to do projects at the produce market. Once we are able to do projects again, and once we can work on the expansion project, that number is gonna really swing the other way into the produce market. So the last thing that we'll look at will be the cash balance. And so if we do everything that we talked about today in the operating budget, if we do everything that we talked about in the capital improvement budget, if we collect everything that I'm expecting us to collect in rent, our unrestricted cash would be $5.685 million, and then at 2025, and then at June 30th, 2026, it would be $6.454 million. But we have to remember that last year, this board restricted $2.5 million of our cash that can only be used at the produce market. So what I like to do is I'd like to go back just for a moment and look at how much have we spent at the produce market and how much we spend at the Maryland Market Center. And if you add that $2.5 million to the produce market line, then we spent more money at the produce market. So it makes me feel a little bit better. I feel like we're getting to an area of fairness. And so when we look at the restricted amount, because that's the important part, we cannot spend that 2.5 on anything else. So if we look at the restricted balance, we will have $3 million available at the end of 2025, and we will have just under $4 million available in 2026. That's right where I want to be. I never want to go lower than that because it doesn't give us any room for anything catastrophic to happen. I was here when markets were blowing out or we're having 80% vacancy in a market. I've been here for that. So I want to make sure that we're covered. And we weathered that. We got through that. Why? Because I do this. Because I do this, because I make sure we always will have the cash. I make sure we will always have the net income, and we will always be taking care of all of our facilities. So that is the end of my presentation. Does anyone have any questions related to the things that we just talked? I know, it's a lot.
No, it's one.
It's a lot. And I know.
Yeah, so we have the renovations on page 4 for units 4, 10, 12, 14, and 16. Are they vacant? I know you said 4 spaces.
Just 4.
But you think the other ones?
Oh, 16, sorry, thank you guys, yes, I got 16 back too, thank you.
They're going to be, those are going to be vacant?
We don't know,
Okay. You want them to,
we would love for them to be vacant,
because they're old.
they are old, yes. There are fire marshal issues,
Oh,
so we would really like to be able to get those units back and to gut them and start over. So but we
don't
don't.
they jockey someplace else within the center, or they just, will the current tenants go away or
That's what I-
go on
yeah.
hold or?
Well, I don't know what they're gonna do yet, honestly, I'm not sure what they're gonna do yet, have you had an update on that?
Are they just, are they discussing?
theory.
In theory, they may be moving into another building. Oh.
Okay,
Which would be great for them.
so we don't evict any, I mean. The fire marshal would shut us down, right? If I ask the questions that should be asked, we don't like fire marshals to like yell at us, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we wanna talk about this in detail, I think we need to go into closed
Okay,
session.
okay,
Yeah,
That's just.
which is, we can do, but.
Definitely can.
or, yeah,
Okay.
what,
416, yes.
416,
Right now,
yes, there you go.
absolutely, yeah.
hey, you didn't give me emotion on that, what's the preference of the group, do you want to delve in a little more, or just? Put it on
Wait
hold,
for an update on that when we have.
maybe an
one.
update,
Yeah.
a future update, yeah, future update, that can be added in with Doc and take us into closed session, but thank you.
Great question, Carrie, because I totally forgot we got 16 minutes. Look how excited I am.
Okay.
Anything else?
Hey, this is Ben. Can I ask a kind of very specific question? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm just curious, this might kind of not be like the right fit or match, but like when you're looking at things like some of the vehicles that you'll need to purchase and like the stream restoration, there's a lot of available resources in the Inflation Reduction Act. Hopefully they'll still be around over the next couple of years, but especially on the vehicle side, you can get pretty significant discounts and rebates, even as a government entity or a nonprofit for purchasing, electric vehicles. So I'm just curious if you've looked into that. The state more broadly is looking into that. DBM is going to be filing next week to get a pretty significant rebate on electric vehicle purchases across agencies. So just curious. I mean, it could be. Obviously those cost more, right? But the rebates are pretty significant. So just curious if you're looking at that. And then on stream restoration, there's a lot of federal funding out there for paying for stream restoration. Just knowing where we are right now with our state budget deficit, whether that's another area that you all would consider or look at.
We would absolutely look at all of that. I can tell you that the second to last truck that we purchased was a hybrid, so we are going down that route. We have not investigated any rebates, but we certainly can. When we do buy our trucks, we buy them under state contracts, so we know that they've already been competitively bid, so we know we're getting the best price that's available for us at the time. But we can certainly look at the stream restoration to see if there's federal funding available, and also the issue that we might run into with doing the electric trucks, even after a rebate costing more, is that the tenants pay for that. So they would have to approve whether we would do that or not. I suspect if it costs them more, they would say no. They don't seem to be the bunch that is super environmentally conscious over saving money. They really like to save money. So, but we can certainly look into all of that. Those are great suggestions.
And if you want, I can connect you to the folks at DBM who have been kind of quarterbacking this. That might be helpful.
That would be fantastic. Thank you, Ben.
Okay.
Good to see all the folks on big screen. Any other questions for Angela? Okay, so at this point, we need a motion.
We need a bunch of motions.
We need a bunch of motions. So there's three actually. The last one is very complicated, but the first one, I'll entertain a motion to approve the FY24 audited financial statements, which was part of our packet that was FedEx to all of us.
Looks like this.
Like that, yes, it says audit report, audit.
And it says Lindsay and Associates. Lindsay and Associates.
Is there a motion to approve that presentation packet by Lindsay and Associates for FY?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion on the audit report? All in favor of approving, say aye. All opposed, sign or a wave or something. Okay, so that's approved. Thank you all. Second motion that we need is for the capital improvement budget, which is page 4 and 5.
But there's also an entire.
And there's an entire packet, right? We have a cheat sheet and then we have the entire packet that says cleverly capital improvement. That has more of the details. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the revised FY25 and FY26 capital improvement budgets in total. Robert, thank you. Second, Wendy, thank you.
Second, Wendy.
Wendy, second again. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, this one.
Take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath. There's a lot of numbers in it too. Okay, so this is, I will entertain a motion to approve the revised FY25 operating budget and the FY26 operating budget in total. Included in these budgets is a 2% COLA increase on January 1, 2025 for all MFCA employees, including the executive director, and a 4% merit and a 2% COLA in FY26 for all Food Center Authority employees, including executive director. The FY25 COLA on January 1st, 2025 And the FY 26 increase will only be given if the state of Maryland authorizes increases for all state agencies. I feel like I'm at the Dairy Princess contest. Would you like me to reread the pop question? I'll entertain a motion that I'm happy to reread it because it is, Angela explained it, but this is the short version of only if the state of Maryland approves those any increases for anybody. And I know Darren and I have lived through furlough days and some of them Mark did too. They're lovely. But we had jobs, so. Anyway, so I need a motion to approve what I
Make
just. Thank you.
That one.
Thank you, included in that, right? Is there a second? Thank you. Who's the second? Susan, what's the second? Okay. Any further discussion or clarification on that? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Similar sign. Any opposed? Same sign. Thank you. So there's a lot of ifs there as we follow the headlines. All righty, and then the next, get back, revenue and expense statements, right? Where we are?
That's me.
Item.
Again, aren't you sick of me?
No, we're not.
Okay, so
We're not.
turn to the back of the book that
Oh,
is,
the board.
that was here, it
The board back.
says MFCA authority meeting. MFCA authority meeting. And for the people on the call, you received a copy of these reports
Right.
in your packet. And also emails. No, there was a copy of the confidential.
Got lots of them. Yeah.
They've gotten it 3 ways.
Right.
Okay. So the first one that we'll look at is the produce market schedule. And the only super important column to look at is the one that says fiscal year 25. The second one from the left. This is the report where if you take a look at the very top number where it says entrance fees, well, it says entrance, but it's entrance fees. In fiscal year 25 so far, we've collected $111,000 for the tenants. If you slide over to fiscal year 24, you will see it was only $62,000. That's because they voted to increase their entrance fees as of 7/1. If you slide down, fiscal year 25, the total expenses that we've done so far up through August 31st is $238,000. The amount that we have billed the tenants in service expense reimbursement on their monthly invoices is $180,000. And so right now, the surplus is $53,500. What I would expect to happen as we go through the coming months, I would expect this number to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And why that would happen is because the entrance fees are so much more now. So what will end up happening, I probably will give it maybe 2 or 3 more months. And then we will reduce their rent invoice. So when they get their rent invoice for their service expense reimbursement number's gonna go down. That number's gonna go down. And so that when we look at this next time, we will have less money going into the service expense reimbursement bill. And the plan is always to try to have that number as close to 0 as possible. When the year ends on June 30th, if that is a positive number, we give a full refund to the tenants right away. If that is a negative number, it gets split up based on the weighted average of each tenant that was in units, and it's billed over, we usually do 6 months, so that it's not like 2,000 that you owe this month, we split it up over a longer period of time. So that's the produce market. Does anyone have any questions at the produce market before we move over to the Maryland Market Center?
How often is, I mean, I guess not often the railroad, it's actually used.
It gets used maybe 4 times a month. And keep in mind that when we do this renovation, part of that is removing it, so rail access will be gone. Slide over to the Maryland Market Center. We can take a look at their schedule. And you can see, we're gonna look at the fiscal year 25 column, that's really the only one that we super care about. And they have not increased their entrance fees, and they are also at a surplus of $29,589. So over the next few months, if we continue to see that number trending up and up and up, then we will reduce their service expense reimbursement. So the point is to try to get it to be as close to 0 as possible when we hit June 30th. Does anybody have any questions on this? You wanna do a motion to accept these?
Yes, I do. I will, I'll accept the motion to accept both R and Ds for Market Center and Produce Market. That can be a combined motion, according to Peggy. Anyway,
Motion.
hey, Carlton's here in person, he lives. He said, great. Is there a second? Gary. All in favor? Any opposed? I didn't ask for further discussion, but. Thank you, Angela. Okay. Just a couple other things. We have the tentative dates for 25 on the agenda, so we can log those into your paper and or electronic calendar, and then I still forget things. I mean, both, so that's my problem, but you all are smarter than that. And one thing we talked about possibly scheduling a field trip over to Rock Hall, kind of looking at the May timeframe. We haven't narrowed that down any further. Did have a conversation with Darren one day when we crossed paths somewhere that maybe, since that's the beginning of strawberry season, we might want to add a stop at our University of Maryland's Y Research and Education Center in there, that's not the Queenstown, as a possibility. We're gonna go as far as Rock Hall, maybe on the way back, and talk with our researchers there, so that, ambitiously, we also have Dairy Farm if we want to visit in Kent County, but that's a really full day, so we can, but if you've never been to any of the research and education centers that are operated by the University of Maryland College of Ag and Natural Resource, we're all paying for them and they're all doing great work. So that's my plug as a retiree. Put you on the spot, Martel, a little bit on this energy stuff that's going on in Carroll, Frederick, and Baltimore County. Angela watched the news last night. It's any words of wisdom from the department, just follow the news. It is what it is. Follow the news. And I'll defer to Susan to do a little pitch for an upcoming event related to agriculture and food.
Yeah, sure. So I'm executive director of the Maryland Agriculture Council, one of many hats, and Gail's my finance director, so.
No, I've changed my title.
Pretty convenient.
Community Registration Coordinator.
I think that's baloney. So the agricultural community, when you say that, most people just think it's bunch, but honestly, that's not at all what, we're an umbrella organization, which now certainly encompasses everything from energy to, our startups, our small businesses. We do an event once a year. It's always the first Thursday in February, so we do it during the legislative session in order to get some state legislators there, in addition to our county officials. This year we're offering or opening an invitation to all of our county executives, county representatives. So, but we like to have folks there that represent agriculture as a whole, or landowners, anybody that has, and I think of the Food Center Authority, certainly it's being, all of us is involved in food in any way is part of our agricultural community. So anyway, this event brings together all of those folks together with legislators. The governor appears every year, does a wonderful job. In addition to like a lot of our next generations come as well. So it's about 1,000 people. We do it at Live Casino at Arundel Mills, and it's a great time. And we so Gail takes care of all the community. What was your title now?
Community registration. Community registration.
So she bless her heart brought some of the extras today, so I'm gonna.
Darren's already registered. Mark's already registered.
Yeah, so those are registered. Yes, there we go. But we would love for you to come. I think you've been.
Yeah.
You came the last couple of years, so. Anyway.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Thursday, February 6th.
Yeah, February 6th,
Sorry.
yes. Sure, honey. Here, I'm just gonna, there you go. You can throw that.
And I think, I know the website is listed in the letter. Images from previous events. It's the diversity of the industry, I think, is showcased.
The powerful part, which is
Yes.
really good for all of us.
The group works in coordination with the Maryland Department of Agriculture and does recognize a Hall of Fame family.
Yes.
So that's the only award recognition. Anyway, a lot of good food. The chefs at Maryland
Oh,
Live.
yeah.
Go.
Yeah, this is the other
Yeah.
investor plug is we use all pretty much local.
Yeah.
The chefs there at that facility get so excited every year because it's like the one time that they can be super creative. And I literally work with farmers all over the state, taking for food products, now they're just lining up to get their food there. Even some of our smaller folks that have big houses and lettuce, they're excited to get their lettuce in front of 1,000 people to see. So we give them as much as possible. There are small farmers, large farmers, you name it. We do have a great family going in this year that I can't announce, but we
I
will.
was gonna ask, who is it?
Announcement closer to the date.
It's anything yet, but you, everybody probably would kind of know of them. Seriously, because, and so that's gonna be exciting in itself.
Hey, first initial, last name.
Who was that presenting?
Enjoy.
Any other general business questions, concern?
There's a question.
Oh, yes,
I couldn't catch who was presenting.
that was Susan Summers.
Okay, and when did she say the event is?
It's called the Taste of Maryland Agriculture,
Gotcha, okay.
the first Thursday of February at Maryland Law.
I thought she said February, thank you.
Yeah, I'll send,
Yeah.
yeah, we can send Peggy an electronic version, yes. Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Yeah.
Alrighty, I think, entertain a motion to adjourn. There you go, Carlton. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Yeah, 30 record time, and as we roll through the rest of November and December, and we'll
March
convene
20th.
March 20th is our next official time,
So.
plan ahead,
And
yes.
again, there's food.
Oh, right.
There always is.
Excuse me, Gail, I just wanted to say something to the group. For some of you, this is the first time I've met you, and for others of you, haven't seen you physically in years. And I just wanted to tell you, it's an honor to be on this board, and the support that I've gotten from this board while those of you don't know, I had a severe spinal surgery. And there was a question whether I would be paralyzed from the shoulders down. And after years of rehab in my back, and I just want to know, this was one of the most stable parts of my life here, and I serve on several boards as Markman's too. This is absolutely my favorite. You people are experts in your fields, and I respect it, and it's an honor to be here. I learn, and at the same time, I train. And so this is what we're doing here is really God's work. I love it because I can talk to businesses and say, hey, this is the state of Maryland doing something to help. So instead of the antagonistic relationship between government and business, that doesn't exist here. It's us, it's businesses linked together with us and linked together with the community. So, like I said, we have lawyers here, we have people with master's degrees from Hopkins and HR, we have professors here, we have directors here, lions and tigers. So, but I just wanted to know, I respect all of you for what you're doing, and I am, again, deeply honored to be a part of this.
Gary does have a voice. I forgot to ask Gary if he had anything else to add to the show. We appreciate all that you do physically on the market and all the staff and folks down there. It is amazing. So, So, well, thank you, Carlton. Yes, I think we've all learned something every day, not just major accounting principles. It's can take selected, really fine-tuned questions to other boards that we sit on and say, well, Angela said. And I don't even know who Angela is. Right.